Prosecution said that this campaign had caused economic damage of nearly £750,000 and cost the police £1 million, money taken away from catching burglars, drug dealers and rapists. Hallam and his fellow defendants were prosecuted under a new law of conspiracy to intentionally cause a public nuisance, introduced by the last Tory government in an attempt to crack down on disruptive protests. Fair play to Labour, who will keep this law in place. Well done, Sir Keir. The disruption allegedly caused more than 50,000 hours of traffic delays, affecting the journeys of more than 700,000 vehicles. 2 lorries collided and an Essex police officer suffered concussion and bruising after he was knocked off his motorbike in traffic. People missed flights, people missed funerals, students were delayed for their exams. A child with special needs on his way to school missed part of the school day and missed his medication, which placed the taxi driver at risk, as the child can become volatile without that medication. The list goes on. An individual suffering from aggressive cancer missed an appointment as a cancer patient and had to wait another 2 months for another appointment. Now, in a defiant statement released after he was jailed, Hallam, who thinks he's Jesus and has the beard and sandals to prove it, insisted that his only crime had been giving a talk on civil disobedience as an effective evidence-based method for stopping the elite from putting enough carbon in the atmosphere to send us to extinction. As the top law professor Andrew Tettenborn writes in The Spectator magazine, Just Stop Oil is no doubt sure of its cause, but its position is frightening. It claims, in effect, the right to immobilise the country and decide who is allowed to go where. Frightening is the word. I'm all for having a debate about the environment, and I am pro-net zero if it's done intelligently. But the likes of Hallam are basically religious fanatics, and what they're planning for all of us would render the country into an effective third world nation. They want the government to end the extraction and use of all oil, gas and coal by 2030. Now, what this would mean is a total collapse of our manufacturing industry, an explosion in the cost of energy, endless blackouts, and the kind of economic damage that would make the government's COVID response look like a minor intervention. Even though Just Stop Oil are politically further to the left of Karl Marx, they are supported by pampered, out-of-touch middle-class virtue signallers who wouldn't know what a real day's work looked like if they tried. One of the activists, jailed alongside Hallam, is called Cressida, and the other, Lucia, posher than a bottle of Bayliss and Harding hand soap. Other brands are available. Thanks, Greg. Now, I defend anyone's right to legally protest, but not if it causes harm to other members of the public. And I'll be honest, this crazy cult is pretty bad for its own members too. With Hallam in jail, that's good news for youngsters like this woman, Louise, videoed a couple of years ago dangling on top of a dangerous gantry on the motorway. She is someone who has clearly been radicalised, alongside a couple of others. Take a listen.
I'm here because I don't have a future.
We're on the brink of climate catastrophe.
How worse does it have to get? How many kids have to die?
Off they go to the funny farm. Now, I would be willing to release Mr. Hallam early from jail if he decides to go and protest in China instead, or India, or Brazil, or even the United States, where they are burning fossil fuels for fun. Yes, some of China's emissions come from the production of the goods that we then purchase here in the UK. But with an overall carbon footprint of less than 1% of global emissions, for the UK to damage itself economically at this stage and reduce energy supply makes no sense at all. Look at the numbers. In 2020, for example, 43% of our power came from a mix of wind, solar, bioenergy and hydroelectric sources. It's pretty clear that Britain is a low-polluting country already. Now, I'm all for a future based on nuclear and green renewables. But as demonstrated following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, energy security is national security. And for us not to be accessing oil and gas from our own shores is an act of national suicide. Millionaire Labour donor Dale Vince and posh TV presenter Hugh Fearnley-Whittingsdale have condemned the treatment of Roger Hallam. Of course they have. And BBC Nature presenter Chris Packham is raging about this too. Now, this is a man who has proudly said in the past that it may be time to break the law to pursue the eco-agenda. And ultimately, that's what you're dealing with here. Privileged, deluded and radical people who are happy to discard the rule of law and the democratic process in order to pursue a deeply flawed and destructive agenda. With support from the likes of millionaire-lovey actress Emma Thompson, Just Stop Oil is an entirely bourgeois exercise, a crushingly middle-class outfit, which has no regard for ordinary working people who will suffer if they succeed in sinking the country. The planet is heating up with potentially devastating and expensive consequences. We must act. But the idea of eco-Armageddon is just another luxury belief, so beloved of the likes of Hugh Fearnley-Whittingsdale, Chris Packham and, of course, Gary Lineker. These luxury beliefs, just like open borders, for example, are ideas and opinions that confer status on the pampered, privileged elite, whilst inflicting eye-watering costs on the ordinary public. Well, Just Stop Oil have paid their own high-priced price this week for their illiberal and dangerous activities. And their insane eco-agenda has been exposed as hot air. The public are sick of artworks being desecrated, of sporting events being disrupted, of daily lives being ruined. It's critical that we save the planet in a constructive and sensible way. But luckily, the Just Stop Oil lunatics are running out of steam. Let's hope that Hallam's jail cell hasn't got central heating. Let me know your thoughts, gbnews.com/your say. First, tonight's top pundits. Broadcaster and journalist Nina Mishkov. We have former national newspaper editor David, Neil Wallace, I should say, and radio and TV legend Diddy David Hamilton. Great to see all three of you. Let me start, if I can, with you, Neil Wallace. Just Stop Oil's leader and founder is in jail. I say good riddance.
Same here. No doubt about it.
I mean, do they have a point about the fact that the global temperatures are going up and in the end there will be huge destruction?
One of the things I find particularly objectionable about these people is they sort of take the view that they're the only people who know anything. You know, nobody's arguing with those figures. It's about what you do about it and how you can do it in a way that can carry the British public, not their little band of well-to-do Surrey-based followers. All these nice people who drive to this station in their Land Rover Discoveries and their five-wheel drive SUVs and get mummy to drop them off via Marks and Spencer's, incidentally, to buy a nice sandwich on their way in. It's sadly, but inevitably true, when you look at this, you see what it is. You see white, middle class, either middle-aged and above, or you see these nice young girls out of university. And it's a great pity because, as you quite rightly pointed out in your piece there, hundreds of thousands of people, their lives were disrupted by this. I think there's a great difference between, you mentioned, say, a football match. Actually, that's not a good example. But chaining yourself to the gates of Buckingham Palace, to doing something that affects politicians, but to do something that can so dramatically devastate the lives of almost 1 million people because of what you believe you're entitled to do, and essentially screw the rest of us, do what I say or screw you. That is not a way forward, and you can't countenance it.
Most definitely. Nina, we can debate their methods all day long, and most people think their methods are actually really destructive and counterproductive. But it's what they want to achieve that's worrying as well. The idea that we're going to stop using oil and gas and coal by 2030, the country will become like a third world nation within no time.
Well, it's not actually possible to do that. It's not physically or practically or economically viable in any way at all. And you could say, well, they're making this an objective so that to push us further along the line so that we'll get along faster somehow. But you can understand. I mean, today in Dubai it was over 140 degrees. I mean, I know Dubai gets hot, but for heaven's sake. So the planet does need action. We do need to take action. But this guy, the whole point of protest, and we're a wonderful country, and we have a wonderful history of allowing protest. But to protest means to draw people's attention to something and then to bring the public along with them so that the movement grows and so that the people who have control and who have the power to change things take note.
Yeah.
Now, the thing is, they've long ago lost us. Stonehenge, that's a step too far. And this certainly, I have to say, although I think the 5 years is draconian, this event was absolutely appalling because people actually missed funerals, missed hospital appointments. You cannot disturb people's lives in this way and expect them to come along with you. It's completely counterproductive and it's stupid, it's arrogant.
David, however, the scientists are united on the fact that global temperatures are rising. There's going to be an enormous economic cost if we ignore the problem, and that's why Just Stop Oil are out protesting.
Yes, absolutely. I think this is a deterrent. And first of all, I don't think this chap will do 5 years. Normally, the sentences are half, so that would be 2.5. And then if Labour get their way, these are one of the people. These are one of the people that will get released. So I think he'll probably finish up doing about a year.
Yeah.
But I think it sends out a message to these people. And as both of you have said, I mean, they haven't had public support. And if you're stuck on the M25 for 9 hours and people have hospital appointments and have to see a doctor, it just isn't funny. So I know they want to draw attention to their cause, but they've gone about it the wrong way and they don't have the public support.
OK, and I think just to clarify, I think Dubai would have been 100-odd degrees Fahrenheit.
Not centigrade.
No, I mean, my oven...
No.
That's how I do my Findus crispy pancakes. But that's not euphemism, by the way. Neil?
Just a quick point. Earlier in the year, I went on a private trip across China, and I went by train on quite a large part of it. If you go on a train for any distance across China, you will see power station after power station after power station pumping out noxious gases that are all driven by fossil fuels. Your point was well made. Go there and protest. That's what matters. The tiny difference we make is infinitesimal.
But we should lead the way. We should lead the way. We shouldn't just give up because of...
No, of course, yes, you're right.
No, I guess there's a middle ground, but what do you think, folks? Is it time to change our lifestyle in order to save the planet? GBnews.com/your say. Next up in the big story, Joe Biden on the brink. Will the US have a new president by this time next week? And could this be a setback for Donald Trump's dream of a return to the White House? I'll be speaking to a top political insider live from the United States next.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
King Charles has launched his own aftershave, costing, wait for it, an eye-watering 135 quid for a 100 millilitre bottle, promising buyers that they can smell just like the gardens of his Highgrove country pile. Now, this is something that Meghan Markle would do, surely not the King. Is this a case of King Charles selling out, watering down the brand, just like Meghan? Well, join me now to discuss this is the royal broadcaster, Helena Chard. Helena, welcome to the show.
Martin,
often on the show, we've had a pop at Meghan Markle, the Sussexers, for selling out, for flogging strawberry jam, and now the King is flogging Pong. Is this really the right royal thing to do?
Do you know what? So the joy of luxury Highgrove splash, at the end of the day, Highgrove is such a special place, and the Highgrove shop sells amazing things on there. And as we know, the profit actually goes towards charity. So it's the King's Foundation, which was formed in 1986. Profits go towards educational and training, and it's all to do with this sort of sustainable world. But not to forget as well the charitable aspect and the whole ethos of the King's Foundation, and that's so important. This is not just something that's going up on the website and just being sold purely to go into someone's pocket. So I think, all in all, I think everyone should have a look at the Highgrove website and see what's on for sale. I mean, there are lots of really lovely, I think pretty fairly priced products, and even more so, go and see the gardens. As we know, King Charles is a keen environmentalist, and the gardens are fabulous.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
As time passes,
she could have saved Storm.
You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, a big reaction to my big opinion. The guy who founded Just Stop Oil is in jail. He's got 5 years. I say good riddance. Throw away the key, frankly. This from Glynis, who's a GB News member. Hi, Mark. Just Stop Oil want to highlight their campaign. What a better way than for Roger Hallam, Daniel Shaw, Louise Lancaster. Sorry, I don't fully understand that message, but let's have a look at another one. Anthony says, Mark, the polar ice caps are not melting. The ice is getting thicker. Heating up. Total rubbish, says Anthony. Tony says the Ice Age ended without humans using oil. It is just a natural cycle. David, Mark, why do these people think we have to lead the way on climate change or indeed anything? And last but not least, Diane. Good evening, Diane. How are you? Diane says, Mark, China have so many power stations because the West buys so many products from them. I'll get to more of your opinions shortly. Always the highlight of the show. But it's time now for the big story. And today's papers report that President Joe Biden has been left feeling angry and betrayed by Democrats trying to convince him to quit the presidential race as the number calling for him to go reaches 36, with rumours that former President Barack Obama is leaning on Biden to pull out of the race in November. But can he even remain president for that long, given his increasingly stumbling public performances? Let's get the views now of renowned American psychiatrist and political commentator, Dr. Carol Lieberman. Dr. Lieberman, thank you so much for joining us. First of all, do you think it's now a certainty that Joe Biden will withdraw from the race in November?
Well, first I want to apologize for looking like a drowned rat, but your show contacted me after I had just finished an hour of jumping my horse in 94-degree weather, so sorry.
You look fabulous, and a lucky horse you've got there.
Will he drop out of the race? Well, it's very interesting, first of all, that Obama is finally saying that he should drop out, because I think that he had wanted Biden to stay in when it seemed like there was any chance that he could win, because Obama is the puppeteer of Biden and he likes that position. But even Obama finally realized that this was a losing battle, that there's no way that Biden, I mean, everybody now has seen from the debate and even after that and before that, that he really does have dementia. He really has, whatever he has, he's not fit to serve. So Now, I'll tell you something that I haven't yet, the first media outlet that I am telling, last week, just at the end of this past week, I wrote a complaint to Adult Protective Services in Washington, D.C., complaining about Jill Biden for elder abuse.
Wow.
Now, I'm not sure if that is, it was kind of like what happened with Michael Jackson. When I used to do interviews about Michael Jackson and say, he shouldn't be with his children, he's dangerous to children, and I kept saying it, and I kept saying somebody should do something about it. And nobody did anything about it. So finally, I did something. I reported him to Child Protective Services and the sheriff and whatever. And then they had that trial. So it came to me to be the same with Jill. I mean, I've been saying, Jill, somebody should report her for elder abuse. I wasn't saying that at the very beginning because it wasn't as bad, but now that he has declined so much and she keeps pushing him out on the stage, it is elder abuse. And so I thought somebody has to report her.
Of course, Dr. Jill Biden is not here to defend herself. She would likely deny and reject those allegations and insist that the president remains in robust good health. But Dr. Carroll, you're entitled to your view. You are also a medical professional. You're known as America's psychiatrist. Notwithstanding the race for the White House in November, do you think that Joe Biden can reach November in a satisfactory manner? He seems to go from gaffe to gaffe on a daily basis now. Now, we just lost the line to Dr. Carol Lieberman, but that's an extraordinary allegation on the part of Dr. Carol, and she does know about psychiatry because she's a qualified psychiatrist herself, but she thinks that Dr. Jill Biden, Joe Biden's wife, is guilty of abusing her husband by insisting on letting him continue to be president. Of course, there's another headache for Donald Trump down the line, which is that if Biden goes, which it's expected he will before November, then suddenly he'll have the unknown quantity of a brand new opponent, potentially Vice President Kamala Harris. Let's bring in my top pundits on this conversation, Nina Mishkov and Neil Wallace. Neil, what is your thought on this? Joe Biden, he's on borrowed time. How long has he got, do you think?
I can't believe that if he's able or willing to take advice, that he has that long left to go at all, really. I think that the window here is until the Democratic Convention, which is in, I think, early November. There's less than 16 weeks till that time, or rather until the election. So for the Democratic Party, if they're going to field a new candidate, every day matters. But I have to say, one of the things that this will change what is an astonishing balance within the presidential election race at the moment. If suddenly Trump becomes the old man, if they bring in not necessarily Kamala Harris, who I think many might think is not a good choice because she's been a very lackluster vice president, has attracted very little support. But whether it's her, whether it's, I can't remember her name now, there's a senator, a Governor Gretchen. There is the governor of California,
Whitmer.
All of whom are 20, 30 years younger. That changes the dynamic enormously.
It's interesting you should say that, Neil, because let's go now to Michigan in the USA for live pictures of Donald Trump addressing another rally. You can't keep a good man down, can you? Just exactly a week since the attempted assassination attempt on his life, he's about to go back on a similar stage in Michigan, which is a really important location. A lot of potential votes right there. And Donald Trump will be addressing that rally in just a few minutes' time. Nina, briefly, if you can, do you think Donald Trump will be looking over his shoulder if his opponent is someone decades younger than him?
Well, absolutely. But having said that, I mean, the kind of messianic kind of scenes that we're seeing, the Trump crowd, I find absolutely terrifying and horrifying.
That's democracy, Nina. Why are you terrified of voters? Why are you terrified of democracy?
You say it's democracy, but Trump is a deeply troubling figure. The thought that he would be president again, to me, is just abhorrent.
OK, well, look, what we're going to do... Sorry to interrupt you, Nina. We're going to pick that up in our conversation at 10:30 with the papers. You're hearing the voices there of broadcaster and journalist Nina Mishkov and the former editor of the News of the World, Neil Wallace. They're back shortly, but next up, in a UK TV exclusive, broadcasting legend Diddy David Hamilton talks about his new autobiography. He'll be revealing all, including sex, love and radio. That's next.
Hello, good evening and welcome to your GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. Well, it's been quite an unsettled start to the weekend, but through Sunday is generally an improving picture and it's going to be feeling a little bit fresher too. The reason for this unsettled start, though, is that we have this waving frontal feature across the western half of the UK, and that's moving its way northeastwards towards the country. And that's where we're still going to see some heavy outbreaks into this evening. But for most, it is generally quite an improving picture, still staying fairly cloudy with the odd spot of rain and drizzle, but clearing across western parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, even though a few showers still feeding into western areas. But under those clearer spells, that's where it's going to be feeling cooler, but for most, it's going to be quite a muggy start to Sunday. So there are still some heavier downpours expected, these mainly in the far northeast of the country, but elsewhere across Scotland, quite a bright start to Sunday, just a few showers feeding into the west, and similar across Northern Ireland, still a few showers feeding into western coastal areas, but plenty of bright sunshine to start the day. A bit more cloud around across the south and southeast, and that might just squeeze out a little bit of rain and drizzle at times, but it is generally improving as the morning goes on, so starting to see some sunny spells break through that cloud and leaving a largely dry Sunday for most. A bit of a different story though across Northern Ireland as we see this next area of rain push into western areas, so quite a damp afternoon here, but elsewhere plenty of sunny spells, just a few showers feeding into western parts of Scotland. Slightly cooler temperatures compared to today, so feeling a little bit fresher, but where you catch the sunshine it will still be feeling pleasant and warm. To start the new working week, still plenty of cloud around and still some rain in the north that could be heavy at times. And it is generally going to be quite a cloudy day and feeling quite humid. And we could see some showers by the afternoon, which could be heavy and slow moving across Scotland. So perhaps some heavy and persistent downpours here. A changeable weekend ahead, but that's it from me. Goodbye for now.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates.
You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Another Strictly scandal. I'll be dealing with the BBC in crisis in my take at 10. You won't want to miss it. But first, David Hamilton is one of the most revered and loved television and radio broadcasters of all time, with his work on BBC Radio 1 and 2 and on Top of the Pops. Since his broadcasting career began in 1959, Diddy David Hamilton, as he was nicknamed by comedian Ken Dodd, has hosted over 12,000 radio shows and more than 1,000 television shows. And he's still on the radio every day at midday on Boom Radio. And of course, we're delighted to have him as a regular pundit on Mark Dolan tonight. His autobiography, Long and Winding Road, is out now. David, welcome. to the studio.
Thank you very much. The last time I saw you, I told you that I was writing my book, and you said, I want the first interview, so here I am.
We've got the exclusive. You are a man of your word, and you've written this book for a special reason, and it's a very particular anniversary, isn't it?
Yeah, this is my 65th year in broadcasting, but I started, as you mentioned, on Forces Radio in 1959. I was doing my national service in the RAF, and I was one of the first DJs to play rock and roll. So I played Elvis Presley, Little Richard, Jerry Lee Lewis for the troops in Germany, and of course they loved it.
Well, you were born broadcaster.
Well, my inspiration was Pete Murray. When I was a boy, I used to listen to Pete Murray on Radio Luxembourg, and I saw a picture of him in a magazine called Fab 208, which was the Radio Luxembourg magazine. And he was horse riding in the Grand Duchy of Luxembourg, which he did during the day, and he answered his fan mail, and he played records at night. And I thought, what a wonderful job. That's what I'd like to do, because disc jockey then was a very new job description. And I tell you where I've been very, very lucky. For 65 years, I've done a job that I love, so I've actually never done a day's work.
Well, isn't that wonderful? It's interesting that Pete Murray, who I think is he about to celebrate his 99th birthday?
Pete will be 99 in September, and for the first time now, well, 2 years ago, I did a show with him for Boom Radio, and this is how good his memory is. We were talking about Housewife's Choice, which was a show that ran on the BBC for many, many years, and I said to him, you know, across the table like we are now, I said, Pete, you must have done that a few times, and he went 4 times. I mean, what would Joe Biden give to have a memory and retention like Pete has?
It's remarkable that he was your inspiration to get into broadcasting in the late 50s, early 60s.
Yes.
Well, he was my inspiration to get into broadcasting in the 80s.
Was he really?
When he was on LBC Radio.
Yes, he was.
Late night radio.
Yeah. By the way, when he was at LBC, Pete has always been a little bit forgetful, and he wrote an autobiography called One Day I'll Forget My Trousers. And one night at LBC, he walked out and said goodnight at midnight, but the show didn't finish until 1 o'clock in the morning.
That's a bit awkward. I won't do that tonight.
No.
I think he also fell asleep on air once as well, but he's a true broadcasting legend, as are you. Tell me about the BBC in the 60s and 70s and 80s. What was special about BBC Radio in that era?
Well, when Radio 1 and Radio 2... Yes, Radio 1 and Radio 2 launched at the same time in 1967, they were replacing the Pirates, which were very, very popular, and they had a monopoly of broadcasting. There were no commercial stations, so audiences were huge. And when I joined in 1973, by 75, the programme on Radio 2 at the same time was axed. So my programme was on Radio 1 and Radio 2 simultaneously. And we had an audience of about 15 million, you know, I mean, audiences that would only be dreamt of today. So the response was obviously fantastic.
Yes, indeed. And stars of Radio 1 and Radio 2 in the 70s and 80s, I mean, they were like rock stars, weren't they?
Yeah, they were.
Household names.
They were, absolutely. And, you know, they had, you know, pop following like the pop stars had. Yes, exactly.
Most definitely. Did you abuse your power at all? Tell me about the groupies.
I would like to think not. No.
Well, let me say, did you take advantage?
No, I didn't.
Well, women throwing themselves at you,
and they did, and some of them I caught. But the press have picked up this week on the juicy bits in the book, and of course they would do.
There is a bit of bonking in there, isn't there?
Well, there is a bit, but when I think the thing is, when you write an autobiography, and I did write this myself, didn't have a ghostwriter, you've got to be honest. It's got to be warts and all. Otherwise, if you just said I did this and then I did that, it would be very boring. And I have, in the book, at times, been quite self-critical, because the subtitle is My Life, My Loves and Lessons Learned.
Yeah.
And I found, I'm sure you found the same, but as you go along through a broadcasting career, you learn a lot of lessons, and I've actually chronicled some of those.
Well, what are some of those lessons learned that really stand out for you?
Well, working with Ken Dodd, which I did, which is where I got my nickname, I realised how good he was with the public. He always had time for people, and he would sign autographs until the last, and he would say, all right, whack, OK, Commander, you know. And I looked at that, and also another thing that happened with Ken, when I first went out on a personal appearance with him. I went to his house in Knotty Ash, which is a real place. He took me around the house and he showed me different suites of furniture. And he went to Lewis's Manchester. We went into another room. We went Paulton Sheffield, another room, Lewis's Liverpool. And I realised that they were suites of furniture that he'd got in lieu of payment. And over his shoulder, he said to me, "Listen and learn."
Yeah, most definitely.
I mean, working with those old pros, Ken Dodd, Tommy Cooper, Benny Hill, was such a privilege because they were giants of comedy.
Yeah, yeah. Has your career had an impact on your personal relationships? I know that your first marriage ended, and I think you blame yourself for that.
Well, yes, I do. I was doing a TV series, and basically I fell in love with the girl who was the hostess of the TV series, and that broke up my first marriage. And then subsequently she left, and then I lived with somebody else, and she left. I think there's a bit of a pattern here, isn't there, really? But I think, really, I was always a workaholic, and I think in some ways, you know, I did put my career first. And if you do that, sometimes your private life suffers.
Most definitely. You've managed to sustain a career over many decades. You're still on the radio, Boom Radio, a daily programme and an evening show as well. What do you put that down to, your longevity? How have you achieved that?
I think I've been very lucky because the right thing has very often come along at the right time. And with Boom Radio, it was during lockdown, and I was due to do Pointless Celebrities, very, very apt. And at the last minute, my appearance was cancelled because they couldn't get health insurance for me because I was over 80.
Is that right?
So Mrs. H and I were walking up the farm lane, and I said to her, "I think the game's up." And she said to me, "It's not over until the fat lady sings." And 2 weeks later, I had a call from David Lloyd, I think you know, who was running Boom Radio, and he said, "We are setting up a radio station for boomers with everybody broadcasting from home." So how timely was that, and how lucky was I at, what was I then, 82, to have a new lease of life?
So many entertaining stories in the book. Was there any pain involved in writing it?
Yes, there was. There was pain of breakups, and yes, there were things that happened in my life that caused me pain.
Any big regrets? Any big mistakes?
I don't regret anything.
You had your time again?
No, I don't regret anything. I think, you know, there's a lovely quote. Can I borrow the book a second? There's a lovely quote at the start of the book which kind of sums it up. And I found this from a man called Hunter S. Thompson, and he says, very short quote, he said, life should not be a journey to the grave with the intention of arriving safely in a pretty and well-preserved body, but rather to skid in broadside in a cloud of smoke, thoroughly used up, totally worn out, and loudly proclaiming, "Wow, what a ride." And that's me. That's me.
Well, that is you all the way. Briefly, if you can, and you know about timings in broadcasting.
I do, yeah.
A couple of seconds on this, but really we could do an hour, which is your cancer diagnosis, for which you've been treated. That was in 2022, a huge shock.
It was only a few months after Boom launched, and I discovered that I had a rare blood cancer called polycythemia vera, which means basically I was too red-blooded.
Right.
Now,
well,
steady.
Story of your life.
Steady. So I'm on chemo tablets, which make me a little bit tired. So I'll try not to fall asleep. But with you hosting the show, I'll be OK.
You never flag. Let me tell you that David Hamilton's book is out now. It's a cracking read, let me tell you. Highly entertaining. It is called David Hamilton's Long and Winding Road, My Life, Loves and Lessons Learned. Absolutely brilliant stuff. Coming up next, has mental health become an industry? My Mark Meets guest is the top professor with a cure for anxiety who says there's a natural way to get your life back on track. It's an important interview. It might just change your life. That's next.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm joined now by Stefan Kyriasis to give us the latest on everything theatre.
So, yeah, we're going in first with Starlight Express, which is back. It's not in the West End. It's out at Wembley at the Troubadour Theatre, which is a big, almost kind of warehouse space, which suits because, as you know, have you seen the show?
Starlight Express was my first ever musical. I must have been about 7 or 8 years old. I only saw it once, but I remember it being magical.
Well, this one, it's 1984 it started, and it's still running in Bochum in Germany in a huge arena. So basically what we've got, they've slightly tweaked it, and there's a little boy or little girl, depending on the cast, going to bed, obsessed with toy trains and dreaming of trains. Everybody is dressed up. To me, it looks like a cross between Tron and Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. I don't really think any of them look remotely like a train, but hey, the songs are Andrew Lloyd Webber. It's pop mixed with kind of cod 1950s rock and roll, some power ballads. The lyrics are politely like something out of an old speak and spell machine or something, you know. He's a steam train, they're out of date, he's being bullied by the diesel and the electric, and he falls for this carriage, the first-class carriage, new girl Pearl, and he wants to impress her, so he enters a race, and that's pretty much it. And when the races happen, all these barriers come up around where we're sitting, the lights are flashing, the music's thumping. It's utterly ridiculous, and I felt like a kind of teenager that was huffing sherbet dib-dabs off a giant block of sugar. It's so much fun, and the really crucial thing about it all is that somehow, in the middle of all of that, I felt myself getting into the story. And when Pearl and Rusty have their little duet, I was very moved, and there's this big starlight sequence, which is the inspiration, the magical starlight that he's seeking. It's beautiful.
GB News, the People's Channel. Sunday nights on GB News. From 6, Neil Oliver. At 7, it's Free Speech Nation with Andrew Doyle. At 9, Mark Dolan. And at 11, get set for the week ahead with headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Well, it's all kicking off at the BBC. Strictly Come Dancing hit by yet another major scandal, and it's already breaking tomorrow's Sun on Sunday, and that's the topic of my take at 10. Are the BBC on the verge of axing their biggest entertainment hit? I'll be doing that in 10 minutes' time, but first, Mark Meets. Yes, it's time for Mark Meets, and one of the words that you will hear most often used these days is anxiety, with people glued to their phones worrying about the state of the world and their own lives. But what is anxiety? Is it natural? Is it a force of good or evil in our lives? And can a bit of therapy fix it? Well, a man who attempts to answer that is qualified psychotherapist and podcast host Joshua Fletcher, whose popular show, Disordered, helps people struggling with daily worries. And now all of his know-how and knowledge has gone into a brand new book called And How Does That Make You Feel?, which has become an Amazon Top 100 bestseller and which is winning rave reviews. Joshua Fletcher, welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. You're not feeling anxious, are you?
A little bit anxious, I'm not going to lie. Thanks, Mark, for having me on.
Is anxiety always bad, or does it have some kind of primal benefit to it?
Anxiety is not always bad. It's only becomes bad when it becomes excessive, when it's ruining your life, when it's getting in the way of doing day-to-day things. But no, it can be performance enhancing too. It increases your focus. It reminds you of the consequences of something, so you give it all the importance. But then when it gets into kind of chronic territory where you're having panic attacks, intrusive thoughts, you can't leave the house, that's when it gets, pretty bad.
What is a panic attack?
A panic attack is when your brain's threat response gets confused and misinterprets an immediate threat. And it's usually induced by stress. So if you've had a stressful couple of weeks, couple of months, you may be prone to having a panic attack. And it's when the body just releases about a week's worth of adrenaline and cortisol at once. You feel like you're going to pass out, have a heart attack. Maybe you feel like you're dying, something awful's about to happen. And it's usually in an incongruous situation. So you could be at the restaurant, out with your friends, maybe you're just out shopping.
Yeah.
And because it feels so incongruous, that's what adds to the panic. Nothing's actually attacking you, but it feels really scary. And I think that's why it's got its name.
Joshua, in the old days, we had to worry about being eaten by lions, didn't we? So has our capacity to worry got out of hand and out of proportion?
Well, it's interesting because the part of the brain that's responsible for helping our ancestors get us to the top of the food chain and have this evolutionary advantage, it's an almond-shaped part of your brain called the amygdala, and it's never evolved for thousands and thousands of years. And because it's never had to, because it's been so helpful. And yeah, for our ancestors, it was great to have this response, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, to help us look out for threats. And so for our ancestors, threats were lions, tigers, saber-tooths, whatever. But it's different when you're sat in an office, at home, sat on holiday, and that same threat response is firing off. And then your thinking brain's trying to piece together why that anxiety's kicking off. And so it will draw upon anything around you to try and match why you feel so scared. And when you don't understand properly how the brain works, that can be a scary place. And it's happened to me, and it's how I help my clients.
Yes, Joshua, what led you to write the book, and what are the key themes?
So the book, I wanted to write a book that people could learn about mental health, but in a tasteful way. I think mental health's still a subject that makes people shudder. Me 10 years ago, I'd have been like, I ain't reading that, not a chance. So I wanted to invite people into the therapy room to give a kind of behind closed doors memoir of what it's like to be a therapist. Not only that, but I invite you into my mind. So I share with you exactly what I'm thinking when I'm working with people. I call it a stealth help book because as you're reading, because you're nosy, I'm nosy. So I wanted to write a book where people are nosy and want to be captivated by it. And as you're reading, you'll learn more about psychology, how the brain works, particularly with anxiety. So you're better equipped. And also, if you know someone with anxiety, you'll have a bit of a lexicon to help them out.
Obviously, my viewers and listeners have got to get out there and buy a copy of the book. I'll give the details in just a moment. But briefly, if you can, what are some of the simple ways in which people can tackle anxiety on a daily basis?
First of all, note what your anxiety is. Anxiety is different for everyone. It's a very vague term. So for me, I've got OCD. So I would have intrusive thoughts and be quite obsessive. Some people are afraid to leave the house or not leave a safe person. They'd be agoraphobic or monophobic. People are just anxious all day. You probably have generalized anxiety. If you suffer with panic attacks, you might have panic disorder. So step one is try and identify what anxiety is, because it has a specific way to attack it, to approach it, and then go from there. I'm a therapist, and I never thought I'd endorse therapy as I've got a naughty lad growing up, but I love therapy as well. With the right therapist, things can work really well, and you're allowed to treat your brain the same that you treat your body.
Well, that sounds very, very wise. It's great advice. Let me tell you that Joshua Fletcher's new book is called And How Does That Make You Feel? It's been an Amazon Top 100 bestseller. Next up, I'll be dealing with the BBC, who need their own kind of therapy.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good evening and welcome to your GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. Well, it's been quite an unsettled start to the weekend, but through Sunday it is generally an improving picture, and it's going to be feeling a little bit fresher too. The reason for this unsettled start, though, is that we have this waving frontal feature across the western half of the UK, and that's moving its way northeastwards towards the country. And that's where we're still going to see some heavy outbreaks into this evening, but for most it is generally quite an improving picture, still staying fairly cloudy with the odd spot of rain and drizzle, but clearing across western parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, even though a few showers still feeding into western areas. But under those clearer spells, that's where it's going to be feeling cooler, but for most it's going to be quite a muggy start to Sunday. So there are still some heavier downpours expected, these mainly in the far northeast of the country, but elsewhere across Scotland, quite a bright start to Sunday, just a few showers feeding into the west, and similar across Northern Ireland, still a few showers feeding into western coastal areas, but plenty of bright sunshine to start the day. A bit more cloud around across the south and southeast, and that might just squeeze out a little bit of rain and drizzle at times, but it is generally improving as the morning goes on, so starting to see some sunny spells break through that cloud, and leaving a largely dry Sunday for most. A bit of a different story though across Northern Ireland as we see this next area of rain push into western areas, so quite a damp afternoon here. But elsewhere, plenty of sunny spells, just a few showers feeding into western parts of Scotland. Slightly cooler temperatures compared to today, so feeling a little bit fresher, but where you catch the sunshine it will still be feeling pleasant and warm. To start the new working week, still plenty of cloud around and still some rain in the north that could be heavy at times. And it is generally going to be quite a cloudy day and feeling quite humid. And we could see some showers by the afternoon, which could be heavy and slow moving across Scotland. So perhaps some heavy and persistent downpours here. A changeable weekend ahead, but that's it from me. Goodbye for now.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
£30,000 in cash has to be won. It's our biggest cash prize so far, and it could be yours. Charles was a winner. Listen to what he says about winning the Great British Giveaway.
I'm Charles. I'm on £18,000 cash. It was just amazing, and as soon as it goes into your bank account, it just changed. It's a life-changing thing.
The next big winner could be you, with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sunday nights on GB News. From 6, Neil Oliver. At 7, it's Free Speech Nation with Andrew Doyle. At 9, Mark Dolan. And at 11, get set for the week ahead with headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
every Saturday 10 till 12 will bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 o'clock on television, on radio and online. In the United Kingdom and across the world, this is Mark Dolan Tonight. In my take at 10, as Strictly Come Dancing is hit by yet another major scandal, this is a total failure of BBC management, who may be about to lose their biggest hit. In a dramatic week for royal security, the King and Queen suffer a sniper scare. Meanwhile, the Trump shooter had images of Princess Kate on his phone. As she calls the Tories a collection of fanatical, irrelevant, centrist cranks, is Suella Braverman on the verge of joining Nigel Farage's Reform UK? I'll be asking a top Fleet Street insider. Plus, tomorrow's newspaper front pages. A packed show, lots to get through. And let me give you an early preview. This is tomorrow's Sun on Sunday. BBC in crisis. Are they on the verge of axing Strictly Come Dancing? I'll be tackling that in my take at 10 in 2 minutes' time, after the news headlines and Tatiana Sanchez.
Mark, thank you. The top stories this hour. A man has been charged with violent disorder and arson after a bus was set on fire during rioting in Hare Hills in Leeds on Thursday evening. 37-year-old Euston Dober has been remanded to appear at Leeds Magistrates Court on Monday. Earlier today, West Yorkshire police officers have said they arrested a further 5 people on suspicion of violent disorder, and they remain in police custody at this time. 4 people who were initially arrested in connection with the violent disorder have also been bailed. They're pending further investigation. On Thursday, vehicles could be seen on fire, while a police car was also overturned. The riots are believed to be linked to a case involving local children who were taken into care. In other news, yesterday's IT outage affected almost 8.5 million Microsoft devices. That's according to the tech giant. The company added the figure represents less than 1% of all Windows machines, but it was enough to spark chaos at many of the world's airports. Flight delays are still persisting as airlines and other businesses slowly get back online in time for the summer holidays. Banks, supermarkets and major television and radio broadcasters were among the many others who were also knocked offline yesterday. NHS England is expecting further disruption to GP services to continue into next week. In the US, reports suggest Nancy Pelosi has told colleagues she'd prefer a competitive process to find a replacement for President Joe Biden if he drops out. The former House Speaker is understood to have pushed for an open primary instead of directly nominating Vice President Kamala Harris. That could see several candidates from within the Democratic Party compete for the chance to face Donald Trump, with just 107 days until the election. It comes as the number of Democrats calling on President Biden to stand aside reaches 35. Well, that is thousands of people have gathered for Donald Trump's first rally in public since a gunman shot him in the ear last week in an attempted assassination in Pennsylvania. These are live pictures coming to us from Michigan. At that rally, Trump will be appearing alongside J.D. Vance for the rally, the pair's first joint appearance since the Ohio senator was unveiled as Trump's running mate at the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee. The rally takes place in a crucial swing state that Trump won in 2016 and Biden clawed back in 2020 in that presidential election. Ahead of the event today, J.D. Vance posted on X and he called on Biden to resign from the White House. And finally, a Second World War veteran has finally received his medals, almost 80 years after he saw action in Belgium and Germany. George Lewis, who's now 98 years old, was a part of the Royal Tank Regiment between 1944 to 1947. However, he never received his medals for his service, but now Mr. Lewis's 80-year wait for his medals is over. And earlier today, he was presented them in a special ceremony at the Royal British Legion Club in his hometown in Somerset. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thanks, Tatiana. Welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight. In a dramatic week for royal security, the King and Queen suffer a sniper scare. Meanwhile, the Trump shooter had images of Princess Kate on his phone. Plus, in the last word, as she calls the Tories a collection of fanatical, irrelevant, centrist cranks, is Suella Braverman on the verge of joining Nigel Farage's Reform UK? I'll be asking a top Fleet Street insider. Also, tomorrow morning's front pages at 10:30 sharp, reacting tonight with ringside seats for all the action. Nina Mishkov, David Hamilton and Neil Wallace. Plus, we will bring you all the latest from the United States. Donald Trump is about to address a rally in Michigan. That's 1 week on from the attempted assassination of the former president. I was actually on air here at GB News when it happened. We brought you a brand new breaking news program covering that shocking event. Well, Donald Trump has brushed it off and he's back on stage in a couple of minutes. We will bring you any developments. So, a packed hour, those papers are coming, but first, my take at 10. Strictly Come Dancing, one of the BBC's biggest shows, has just turned 20. But there isn't much to celebrate as this dancing competition limps from one scandal to another, demonstrating that BBC management have two left feet. A third Strictly Come Dancing professional has reportedly been named as a person of interest in the wake of abuse and bullying allegations that are overshadowing the show. Graziano Di Prima was fired from the show last week over reports that he verbally and physically abused his celebrity partner Zara McDermott during last year's series. It came just weeks after the pneumatic Italian powerhouse Giovanni Pernice, a man with a six-pack so robust you could eat your breakfast off it, was suspended while a BBC probe is conducted over claims of off-camera misconduct made by Sherlock star Amanda Abingdon and two other former celeb partners. Meanwhile, historic footage has emerged of former Strictly professional dancer James Jordan threatening to drag his 2006 partner, casualty actress Georgina Bouzova, across the floor and screaming at her during rehearsals if she didn't stand on one leg. It now looks like the BBC itself hasn't got a leg to stand on. On Thursday morning, bosses met with current professional dancer Nadia Bichkova, who has also made a complaint about the show. It follows her acrimonious split from fellow Strictly pro Kai Widrington in June. Because don't forget, they're all shagging each other. It's amazing that they have any time to dance. And in yet another unwelcome development for the corporation, dancer turned judge Anton Dubek is now facing a possible legal battle over historic allegations from 2009 when he was paired with TV star Leila Ruas. The blood, sweat and tears being reported here are more like a gory horror film than a shiny family entertainment show. How can our tax-funded national broadcaster be asleep at the wheel for so long as a picture emerges of a truly toxic culture on the show, in which the contestants are having a miserable time, suffering mental and physical abuse, when the whole thing is supposed to be a fun exercise in improving your dance skills? The outfits might be covered in sequins and be frilly and sparkly, but behind the scenes, it sounds more like Full Metal Jacket. In the end, it looks like the age-old problem of TV. If a show or a star is delivering the ratings, then bad behaviour is overlooked. We saw it with ITV, didn't we, and their appalling handling of the Philip Schofield scandal, in which he had a legal but ill-judged relationship with a young employee on the show. We saw it on the Jeremy Kyle show, with ordinary people's lives being ruined in a quest for ratings. And we saw how the BBC protected the monstrous Jimmy Savile when he was their most bankable star. Now, this scandal on Strictly is not on the same level, but these dancers, who have come from a different field like acting or sport, have spoken about real mental and physical trauma. Now, I've never wanted to do Strictly. The agent has suggested it, but I'm too tall and gangly, and I've got about as much rhythm as Stonehenge. Plus, going on that show is not good for your marriage. The curse of Strictly would no doubt strike. Those female dancers are only human. And now I'm glad that I've never done it, because this scandal hit show is a huge embarrassment for our national broadcaster, which has a duty of care to the stars involved. This debacle will be seen by many as a total failure of management. And it's not like these commissioning editors don't get paid enough money as it is, with their six-figure salaries. And now they risk having to axe one of their most popular shows. Now, I don't want to take sides. It takes two to tango, but if viewers think that the dancers on Strictly are having a miserable time, they're going to waltz off to another channel in quick step. Less cha-cha and more ta-ta. I like the show and I want it to stay, but right now it's murder on the dance floor. This time, the curse of Strictly could be fatal. Should the BBC axe the show amid a growing scandal? gbnews.com/your say. Earlier this week, the BBC announced it would put a member of the Strictly production staff in all future rehearsals, and that there would also be 2 new dedicated welfare producers. The corporation has insisted it would always take any issues seriously and act when made aware of inappropriate behaviour. Let's get the views now of former editor of the News of the World, Neil Wallace, TV and radio presenter David Hamilton, and broadcaster and journalist Nina Mishkov. David Hamilton, is Strictly Come Dancing in trouble? Could it be axed?
No, I don't think so. It's such a big show, isn't it? And maybe the BBC think any publicity is good publicity. Who was it who said that? I think it was Phineas T. Barnum. I don't think it's necessarily true in this case. And if it is the case that the professional dancers are bullying the others who are amateurs, really, they're not professional dancers, I think that's absolutely awful. I don't think the show has been the same since Bruce Forsyth and Len Goodman left. At that time, it was really cuddly family entertainment. And to be honest with you, I'm getting to a point now where I'm getting just a little bit bored with it.
Nina Mishkov, this looks to me to be a total failure of BBC management.
Well, you say they're asleep at the wheel, and it does seem like that could be the case. I mean, I adore Strictly. Every final I dress up in sequins on my own sofa and start with an espresso martini. I mean, I know that's really sad, but I love it so much. I think the problem is that when you look at the professional dancers, they have been through their own training, maybe 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and times were very different then. And I think that the dancing world is a particularly brutal world. I'm sure they got shouted at and screamed at and kicked and, not that's to be commended at all, but that may be the standards that they're accustomed to. And the BBC should have made sure that those standards are not being meted out to their professionals, to their celebrity cup dancers. The problem is, David was saying that it's not been the same since Brucey. I've actually liked it with Claudia. I think Claudia's wonderful. But what it seems to have become is a professional dance contest rather than a journey where we see kind of people who can't dance becoming dancers. Now, it was one last year by Leighton Williams, who'd been in musicals and has gone back to musicals. I really don't like that. I like to see somebody like Krishnan Guramurti, who couldn't dance and who changed not only his dancing ability, but changed his shape, and he said it changed his life.
Anne Widdecombe.
Well...
and of course, lovely Anne Widdecombe, a regular on this show. She's back tomorrow at 10:15. Neil Wallace, the BBC could easily argue that the many millions of people watching Strictly every week prove that it remains a monster hit.
Well, I have to reveal that I won't be wearing my sequins for the final this year. And there are no martinis waiting to be unbottled. However, I have to say that I think two things really come out of this. One, I don't believe they will axe it because they can't. It's their biggest show. Two, I don't believe they should axe it because millions of people like Nina love it for all the best reasons. Three, I think there has been a change in the way that they have tried to turn it into almost a sporting contest. It wasn't that, and part of the great success of it was, to a certain extent, the clodhopping. But what I think is completely true is you are seeing yet another example of management, particularly at the BBC, but the same applied with Philip Schofield at ITV. Management turning a blind eye to the activities of their stars because they don't want to know. And I tell you, they do know something about this before this came out. They have turned a blind eye to it because they don't want to disturb the smooth. You look at what happened just less than a year ago with their major news presenter, Hugh Edwards, who got in tremendous difficulties. They did nothing about it. They did not head it off at the pass. There were lots of issues that have arisen. They did nothing. If you're going to run a successful company, particularly one that is paid for effectively by the taxpayer, pardon me, the licence fee payer, you have a duty to run it properly. And that, I think, is the big scandal in this.
OK, do you think the BBC need to axe Strictly as it's mired in scandal? gbnews.com/your say. In a dramatic week for royal security, the King and Queen suffer a sniper scare. Meanwhile, the Trump shooter had images of Princess Kate on his phone. We'll get your reaction to that next. Plus, Donald Trump is expected on stage at a rally in Michigan any moment now. We'll bring you the footage. That's next.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
She could have said storm. You made my argument for me. My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
It went everywhere. Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
An employment tribunal has found that a senior lawyer telling a legal secretary that she looked nice created an intimidating environment and made her feel violated.
Well, she's won her sexual harassment suit, so is saying someone looks nice acceptable in the workplace anymore?
Well, joining us now to debate this is political commentator Christine Hamilton, who thinks it should be, and author and journalist Rebecca Reid, who thinks making comments like these are unnecessary. OK, Rebecca, why is it unnecessary to tell your colleague they look nice?
Well, how somebody looks at work shouldn't be particularly important or relevant, but I think my issue here is that it's used as a sort of dismissive way to make women feel silly for complaining about things. Like, oh, it's just saying you look nice, why does it matter? But we all know there are different ways of saying things, and if you are an older man in a position of power, looking a woman up and down and saying, oh, you look nice, in a lascivious tone, which, as far as we know, is quite possibly what happened, that's not acceptable, that's not workplace appropriate, and it would make somebody feel uncomfortable.
Christine, she's right, Rebecca, isn't she? It depends how it's said. If you've got someone who's sleazy saying, oh, you look nice, you're going to be a bit off-put, aren't you?
Yes, we don't know whether this was said in a lascivious tone or not, and as far as I can see this particular case, the boss went too far and he did a lot of other things as well. But what worries me is that the Tribunal has ruled that just saying you look nice could be included as sexual harassment. Now, I think that is ridiculous.
Realistically, women don't make these accusations for fun. Women don't make these accusations to be difficult. They do it because they've been made to feel unsafe or unable to work in a certain place.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
OK, folks, so welcome back to the show. Let's go straight to Michigan in the United States, where Donald Trump is expected to address a rally just a week on from the attempted assassination efforts, which was fortunately and mercifully unsuccessful. I was actually on air just minutes after that happened. But it's been a week and Donald Trump is back on stage. Of course, he's officially accepted the Republican nomination to run for president in November. It's him and J.D. Vance, his deputy, that's on the ticket. J.D. Vance, an interesting guy, by the way, a working-class lad. I guess the equivalent of a Red Wall Tory, if you like. He's a conservative that came from nothing, a working-class guy, an abusive family setting, total chaos growing up as a child. He turned his life around, and now he's going to be potentially the deputy president, the vice president of the United States, if Donald Trump is successful in November. Look, we're waiting for those pictures in just a moment, but I understand that Donald Trump has now stepped on stage. Clearly, security heightened because a lot of concern about his safety following the events of last Saturday. And there is the live footage. That's Donald Trump walking across the hall. Another packed rally, thousands in attendance, not an empty seat in the House. And Donald Trump there just making his way across the hall and about to get on stage. Now, you've got to say, whether you share his politics or not, the guy has got courage, hasn't he? I mean, he's got conviction. Many would be cowed by that attack last week. They'd still be receiving counselling, perhaps still in hospital, but not Donald Trump. Up on his feet, ready to address his adoring fans, and he's flanked by his vice president there to his right and to your left on the screen. And look, the chemistry between the two men is good. Donald Trump has momentum now. He has survived this assassination attempt. He's got his deputy ready to go. It is Vance Trump on the ticket, Trump Vance, I should say. And with me to react to this moment, this historic moment in US politics. Oh, wait a minute, let's hear from Trump. He's wandering to the microphone. And here is the man that would like to be America's 47th president, Donald Trump.
Well, thank you very much. This is like a Michigan football game over here. This is pretty good. This is pretty good. I want to thank you, J.D., for the introduction. You're going to be a fantastic vice president of the United States. And, you know, I chose him because he's for the worker. He's for the people that work so hard and perhaps weren't treated like they should have been, but they were treated that way 4 years ago, I can tell you that. But we're going to get it back bigger, better, stronger than ever before. Thank you very much. This is some crap. I'm thrilled to be back in the great state of Michigan with thousands and thousands, and I mean lots of thousands up here. This is a hell of an arena. This is a hell of an arena. But you are the hard-working patriots that we love. You know, they have crowds of people outside. You're not even going to believe it. They go blocks and blocks. But let's forget about them, right? Let's forget about them. Let me begin this evening with a very special thanks to Americans nationwide, including all of you here today, for your extraordinary outpouring of love and support in the wake of the horrific last Saturday event. And when you think of it, it was exactly 1 week ago today, almost to the hour, even to the minute. Yeah. Incredible. What a day it was. As I said earlier this week, I stand before you only by the grace of Almighty God. That's true. I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be here. Maybe JD or somebody else would be here, but I shouldn't be here right now. But something very special happened. Let's face it, something happened. I want to thank Butler Memorial Hospital in Pennsylvania for the incredible job they did and service they gave, and all of the great citizens of Butler, Pennsylvania, and the surrounding area, and everyone else for the job they did and the love that they showed us all. It was incredible, actually. What a time that was. What a time that was. Nobody's seen anything like it, and hopefully they never will again. And they had cameras blazing. I guess it was different in that way too, because we were right in the middle. All those, see, look at all the news back there, and they were all blazing. They were going. No, they covered it fairly. They couldn't believe what they were seeing either. So you did cover it fairly. Let me also thank Congressman Ronnie Jackson from Texas. You know Congressman Ronnie Jackson, for the care and treatment he gave me as an outstanding doctor, which he is. He's really an amazing guy. Where's Ronnie? Doc Ronnie's here someplace. Oh, thank you, Ronnie. Thank you very much. Great doctor. He was a great admiral, a great doctor. He's a White House doctor for Bush, Obama, and a guy named Trump. And they said, who was the healthiest of the three? He said, not even a question, Trump. And I said, I love that guy. I love that guy. When he said that, that was my doctor. Even if he's a congressman, that was my doctor. But he's been a great congressman. Thank you very much, Ronnie, for everything. We appreciate it. Ronnie Jackson. We continue to pray for the recovery of the two citizens who were wounded in that evil attack, David Dutch and James Copenhaver, two really incredible people. We remain in contact and send our deepest respect to the families. Corey, as you know, Corey Comparator was a brave firefighter who died, funeral yesterday, shielding his wife and daughters from bullets. He shielded them from the bullets of this horrendous person. Corey was a hero, and we will carry his memory in our hearts for all time. Great hero. That's great. And he was a big Trumper, and we will never forget him, right? We're all together. We're all together. There's never been anything like what you witnessed the other day with the convention. I don't think there's ever been a convention where there was such unity and love, and even now I'll say it just for a second, the fake news even said it that way. I want to be nice, but the fake news reported it correctly. There's never been such unity, and everybody did a great job, and the speeches and everything. It was just an incredible event. And I'll tell you what, Milwaukee was a fantastic place. This was a beautiful arena, and they did a really great job. And Wisconsin is going to vote for us because we spent $250 million. And when they go into the voting booth, they're going to say, we love this guy Trump. He gave us $250 million with jobs, and they're going to vote. Wisconsin's a very important state, as we know. But they really did. Wisconsin did a great job. Milwaukee. They did a great job, and the arena was fantastic. And it was just love. It was like a big, beautiful 4-day love fest. There was no fight. You know, there was no fight, no screams, no shouting.
There you go, Donald Trump, a week on for an attempted assassination attempt. And let me tell you that the bandage has shrunk. It might have disappeared completely. The ear looks to be healing nicely. It appears to be concealed now by hair. But more importantly, Donald Trump's spirit appears to be in robust good health. Let's get reaction from royal and political commentator live from the United States, Hilary Fordwich. Hilary, what's your reading of Donald Trump's body language in that speech you've just heard?
Well, I think pleasure to be back with you again, Mark. I think he has a renewed calmness, though, about him. I noticed that when, of course, he spoke right after the event. I think that he now has this degree of just a calmness, which is an appreciation. I think that appreciation he verbalized right there in terms of those that have lost their lives. But that's what I think you're seeing. You're seeing an appreciation for his crowds. And the number one thing that he really said moved him was the fact that no one ran and no one left that site. No one left Butler, Pennsylvania. I think that's the difference you're seeing, this new sense of calm about him. And I think that will appeal to more independent voters because it was his sort of braggadocious nature which alienated them. But some sort of updated news for the audience. Yesterday, 4 more Democratic senators came out asking Biden to resign. So now that makes 30 Democrats. And so he has now lost the House, the support of the House. Biden has lost the support of the House. And people really underestimate the fact that this is a 3-way race. It's not just the presidential election, of course. It's about the House and the Senate. And it's all about all those down races, all those Democrats that would run normally on the coattails of an incumbent president. They are concerned about their position.
Hilary, if Joe Biden were to withdraw from the race for the White House in November, would that be a political banana skin for Donald Trump, or is his momentum now unstoppable?
Well, like all things, Mark, certainty is better than uncertainty, no matter what it is, right? When you know what you have. It is obviously, the fear of the unknown. I will say that we know, obviously, what a weak candidate Biden is, but also the other people that they're even looking at or considering have their own sort of slippery slopes too. For example, let me just give you one example. Many people raise the issue of Governor Newsom, but under his watch, in all of Californian history, the population has decreased. People are leaving his state. And I actually live in the state of Maryland. And in Maryland, Governor Martin O'Malley ran for a presidential bid, and he was asked and stumped, and this is what knocked him out, when somebody asked him, why are 1 million Marylanders leaving your state every year? And obviously it's due to the fact that it's a democratic, socialist state of Maryland, all the taxes, and he couldn't answer it. So that would sink Newsom immediately. So there's so many things that could sink so many people. But directly to answer your question, I think the certainty is always better known. There are obviously many variables in terms of whoever else it would be, but they only have 4 weeks until Chicago. So it is basically looking very likely they're going to announce something soon, maybe as soon as Monday.
You think that it could be announced on Monday that Joe Biden is withdrawing for the race for the White House in November?
I'm not predicting it. I'm saying it has to be soon.
Could happen.
Because they need time.
And briefly, so that's an extraordinary development that potentially Biden could stand down from the race, withdraw from the race as early as Monday of next week. Briefly, if he were to withdraw from the race, would he have to stand down as president too?
No.
OK.
Immediately. But that money, don't forget, that money, or that war chest, that $90 million war chest, has to go to Kamala Harris. So she's removed from the ticket. That's something completely different.
Hilary Fordwich, I wish we had longer, but thank you so much for joining us. We'll catch up in the near future. My thanks there to royal and political commentator Hilary Fordwich. The papers are next. Some big headlines. See you in 2.
Hello, good evening and welcome to your GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. Well, it's been quite an unsettled start to the weekend, but through Sunday it is generally an improving picture, and it's going to be feeling a little bit fresher too. The reason for this unsettled start, though, is that we have this waving frontal feature across the western half of the UK, and that's moving its way northeastwards towards the country. And that's where we're still going to see some heavy outbreaks into this evening. But for most, it is generally quite an improving picture, still staying fairly cloudy with the odd spot of rain and drizzle, but clearing across western parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, even though a few showers still feeding into western areas. But under those clearer spells, that's where it's going to be feeling cooler. But for most, it's going to be quite a muggy start to Sunday. So there are still some heavier downpours expected, these mainly in the far northeast of the country, but elsewhere across Scotland, quite a bright start to Sunday, just a few showers feeding into the west, and similar across Northern Ireland, still a few showers feeding into western coastal areas, but plenty of bright sunshine to start the day. A bit more cloud around across the south and southeast, and that might just squeeze out a little bit of rain and drizzle at times, but it is generally improving as the morning goes on, so starting to see some sunny spells break through that cloud, and leaving a largely dry Sunday for most. A bit of a different story though across Northern Ireland as we see this next area of rain push into western areas, so quite a damp afternoon here. But elsewhere, plenty of sunny spells, just a few showers feeding into western parts of Scotland. Slightly cooler temperatures compared to today, so feeling a little bit fresher, but where you catch the sunshine, it will still be feeling pleasant and warm. To start the new working week, still plenty of cloud around and still some rain in the north that could be heavy at times. And it is generally going to be quite a cloudy day and feeling quite humid. And we could see some showers by the afternoon, which could be heavy and slow moving across Scotland. So perhaps some heavy and persistent downpours here. A changeable weekend ahead, but that's it from me. Goodbye for now.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
(10:36) and tomorrow's papers. Mail on Sunday, panic alarms given to all new MPs over safety fears. The Observer, Labour makes working class children key to schools reform. And COVID-stricken Biden resists calls to step down. Sunday Express now. The Great Brexit Betrayal. Labour was accused tonight of a Great Brexit betrayal that will put Britain back in the grip of Brussels. A new law is being drawn up by ministers which could put UK manufacturers in lockstep with the EU on product safety rules. Sunday Times. Universities facing a cash catastrophe. Biden feels betrayed by calls to crown Kamala Harris. And ditch the cap, two-child rule is social cleansing, says Labour MP Rosie Duffield. Independent probation chief warns 97% of the prison's service is failing. Sunday Telegraph now, PM to hand teachers and nurses a bumper pay rise. NHS hospital advised Lucy Letby witness not to testify. And every river in England is polluted with sewage, says Steve Reid, the new Environment Secretary. Sunday Mirror. Why Jurgen Klopp should be next England manager, says Trent Alexander-Arnold. And TV show rocked again. This was the topic of my take at 10. Now female Strictly Pro, hit by claims of bullying. Sun on Sunday, what BBC exec said. Strictly boss, Gio is a shocker. Dancer Giovanni Pernice's behaviour towards Strictly partner Amanda Abingdon was described by a BBC exec at a meeting as unacceptable and shocking. And breaking news, Red Dwarf legend, say the Daily Star Sunday, save our angel delights. Telly star Craig Charles is fed up of Ponzi Foods and reckons we should go back to sticking the likes of Finder's crispy pancakes on our plates. You'd be a smeghead not to, is the headline. OK, folks, well, those are your front pages. Let's have a look at this growing row within the governing party, the Labour Party, Nina. Ditch the cap. Two-child rule is social cleansing, says Labour MP. Now, this, of course, is the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, sticking with a Tory policy of no benefits for families that have more than 2 children. Yep. Should it go? Should the cap go? Should it stay?
It's a very tricky question because that would... If they were to ditch it, it would immediately bring a vast number of children out of poverty. But the government say they can't afford it at the moment. Having said that, over 60% of the people in this country think we should stick at the 2 cap because many people feel that children are not just a right, that they're a privilege and that you shouldn't have...
And a choice.
And a choice. And if you shouldn't have a child unless you can take care of it and financially provide for it. So there's a great argument to the other side. Having said that, in this day and age, and with the cost of living crisis and God knows 14 years of a Tory government, people are really suffering. Children are suffering. More children are in poverty. It's ridiculous. It's a tricky topic because yes, I don't feel that you can just wave a magic wand and do that.
This spells political trouble for Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, doesn't it, David Hamilton? Because this is his own Labour MP, Rosie Duffield, saying that this rule on benefits only for the first 2 children is social cleansing. That's harsh words from a backbencher.
Extraordinary. It looks as though the honeymoon period is over already, isn't it? Lasted about a week. But, it's, I'm afraid I'm a bit lost on this one. It's a very difficult issue, isn't it, really? I mean, telling people that they can only have 2 children, you know.
Well, I guess so. You know, you can have as many kids as you want, but it's the idea that the state isn't obliged to.
You only get benefits if you have 2. So it's encouraging people to not procreate too much, basically.
Yeah. What do you think about this story? I mean, it's trouble brewing for Keir Starmer, isn't there?
No, it's not trouble brewing for Keir Starmer for one very simple reason. He has a vast majority. And one of the things about having a vast majority, which happened with Blair, who was a great rule changer, who changed the world, he had such a big majority, he could see off rebellions like this. And so Keir Starmer, if he wants to, will simply see this off. And I thought the issue Nina mentioned, 60% of the British public agree with this. They agree that there should be a 2-child cap because they do believe that, you know, bring a child into the world is entirely your decision, but it's a decision made that you will pay for it if it is more than 2. And you know that. It's absolutely, you know, it's not a secret thing.
I would have had more kids if I felt I could afford it at the time. And that's what most couples, they make that judgment, don't they? How many kids can we afford to have?
Yeah. Can we afford to have another baby? No. Yeah. Or, yes, let's do it. But you take the consequences of your actions.
The thing is, we don't want to go back to the bad old days of decades ago where having a child out of wedlock was a sin, and therefore children were, you know, back the 60s or 70s, and babies were then adopted willy-nilly, and you only have to watch a programme like Long Lost Families to see the tragedy and the trauma that's caused. And so, but the pendulum's got to swing into the middle, doesn't it?
It most definitely does. A quick line, if we can, on this in the Sunday Telegraph. PM to hand teachers and nurses bumper pay rise. Where's the money going to come from, Neil Wallace?
Well, where is the money going to come from? Is this the first of the many big spends by this government, which they didn't declare in their manifesto.
No, but it was
the truth of the matter is
that that's proposed it. It's not Labour that's saying we're going to give them 5.5%. It's the review board that's the official review board that's suggested it.
Well, wait a minute. I mean, the junior doctors are looking for 35%. That didn't come from the review board.
Tool. That's a bargaining tool.
The bottom line is,
I've had three hospital appointments cancelled because of that bargaining ploy, and as a result of that, my eyes are much worse than they were 18 months ago. So that bargaining ploy is very nice for a junior doctor who is on an average of £80,000 to £90,000 a year. So it's a little difficult to trot out. However, your point earlier that it does come from the review board is a valid one. Whether or not you can still pay for it is a different thing, because there are priorities.
And David, what the Telegraph is saying, briefly if you can, is that Labour have budgeted for a 3% pay rise. If they want to reach 5.5%, they're going to have to tax us even more.
Yeah, I think this is a terrific idea, but I think as my fellow panellists have been saying, where is the money going to come from? And I fear that, you know, taxes can only go up somehow or other.
He hasn't taxed us yet, so we don't know.
Well, he's only been in office 2 weeks.
We haven't had the budget yet.
Well, the money's got to come from somewhere, hasn't it? But it will return to that. Would you be happy to pay more taxes so the nurses and teachers get a pay rise? Let me know your thoughts. Also coming up in The Last Word, as she calls the Tories a collection of fanatical, irrelevant, centrist cranks, is Suella Braverman on the verge of joining Nigel Farage and Reform UK. I'll be asking a top Fleet Street insider next.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Meghan Markle has reportedly finished filming her new show for Netflix. It aims to celebrate the joys of cooking, gardening, entertaining and friendship.
Yeah, this comes after Prince Harry's Netflix documentary, The Heart of Invictus, failed to hit the right note with viewers missing out on the top 10 in the streaming charts.
So, will this next venture be a success? Well, joining us now is royal commentator Kinsey Schofield.
I know I've talked to the both of you about Meghan Markle potentially running for president, so this feels like a bit of a dud to go from Meghan Markle running for president to Meghan Markle's Netflix series about friendship and cooking. So she's wrapped this recent show. They rented a home near hers in Montecito, so that as their cooking set. And they're saying that this is really make or break for Harry and Meghan when it comes to their Netflix contract.
You think, Kinsey, it's fair to say that Meghan Markle has proved to be commercially a bit of a damp squib? Even in America, her native homeland, she's kind of Oprah without the audience when it comes to the cooking. Also, is she kind of, do you think... They saw her as the golden ticket, didn't they, to unlimited revenue, unlimited audiences, and it just hasn't happened.
Look, I think Meghan is a beautiful woman, and I do think she's talented, but I think how you treat people is incredibly important. And not only was she rumored to have been cruel inside Kensington Palace with several bullying allegations, but here in the States, Archwell Productions, their audio section, their scripted section, they've gone through several employees. And I think it's a reflection on the way that people are treated there. And I think as a viewer, you might get that. You might feel that way, and maybe that is where the appeal has been lost.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Should Labour lift the two-child cap on benefits? This from Celia, who says, "Hi, Mark, I have no issue with capping the number of kids you can claim benefits for at 2. You still get child benefit for more, just not all the tax credits. There are many couples who would struggle to have one at the moment. Only have what you can afford and don't expect taxpayers to pay for your kids when they can't afford to have any themselves." And briefly, Norfolk Skies says, "Mark, having children is purely a lifestyle choice. People need to snap out of the idea they're doing the country a favour." OK, let's crack on now, and it's time for the last word. And Suella Braverman, former Home Secretary, has called the Tories a collection of fanatical, irrelevant, centrist cranks after she faced calls to pull out of the race to unite the right of the party behind Robert Jenrick. But reports today suggest that Braverman could link up with Nigel Farage's Reform UK. To discuss this, I'm delighted to welcome the political editor of The Independent, David Maddox. David, is it possible that Suella Braverman could defect to Reform UK?
Well, hi there, Mark. I don't think it is, or at least not at the moment. So when I saw this story circulating yesterday, I actually texted her. We had an exchange of texts, and she denies it completely. I do think, though, that there is an issue of her really feeling very uncomfortable in the current Conservative Party. It's actually, amongst its MPs at least, it's moved further to the left, I would say, since the election, because many of the right-wingers who sympathised with Suella have lost their seats, and many of the new ones are more on the One Nation, which is on the kind of left or the centrist side of the Conservative Party. So, you know, she's going to struggle to get her voice heard, and I know she wants to have a run at the leadership, but I think at the moment she's going to struggle to even kind of get any support amongst the current crop of MPs before she goes to, gets a chance of going to the members.
Do you think the Conservatives, David Maddox, are in denial about how badly they were annihilated on the 4th of July? Do you think that they haven't quite woken up and smelt the coffee yet?
No, I completely think that, actually. I've just been amazed by their behaviour since that defeat. They've just carried on with the kind of backbiting and, remnants of the Civil War which were going on beforehand. And, it's just been amazing. There was some scenes on Friday of them shouting across the Commons at Steve Reed, the new Environment Secretary, just losing control. And, I don't think they appreciate actually how much people wanted them out, including people who normally vote Conservative on the right, which is why, of course, so many went to Reform and went to Nigel Farage. And that's really their problem. I think it's going to be a long path back for them.
It seems like it to me. Let's bring in, if we can, David, my top pundits this evening. I'm delighted to have Nina Mishkov, Diddy David Hamilton and Neil Wallace. And Neil, picking up on that point, I just don't think that the Conservatives have responded to a very clear message from the public in early July.
And how much clearer did it need to be? I think they need to retreat into the shadows probably for another year. They need to regroup. They need to rethink what they are. Maybe it has come to the end of its natural life. You remember that the Liberals used to be the biggest party by a country mile in this country a century or so ago, and they were... The time passed them by. The Conservatives now need to rethink about where they want to be. And internecine fighting will not help them restore their position in front of an electorate that has already said, go away and think about what you do. Go away and rethink why you matter.
David, it would be a coup for Nigel Farage if he could convince Suella Braverman to join his ranks of Reform UK.
Yes, absolutely. You wonder if there'll be anybody left soon, don't you?
Yeah.
And what's interesting too is just how influential a party Reform are going to be in the future, and whether perhaps you know, they are going to be the main party of opposition and not these dinosaur Tories.
Indeed. Briefly, what do you think the Tories should do, Nina? Do they need to shift to the right in order to respond to the threat of Nigel Farage?
Elections are won from the centre, and Suella Bravo, whom I found utterly gruesome, she's talking about fanatical irrelevant. Well, she's fanatical irrelevant and a crank, and if she could join up with Nigel Farage, well, good luck to the pair of them. They're well suited.
Listen, David Maddox, thank you for joining us. Do check out tomorrow's Independent. Its political editor is the brilliant David Maddox. Thank you so much to David Hamilton, Nina Mishkov and Neil Wallace. A busy show tomorrow night. We're going to do a Mark Meets special. We've got one of the most experienced and respected political journalists in the country live in the studio, the sons at Trevor Kavanagh. That's right, the political voice of Rupert Murdoch in this country, live in the studio for a Mark Meets special. See you tomorrow at 9. Headliners is next.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good evening and welcome to your GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. Well, it's been quite an unsettled start to the weekend, but through Sunday is generally an improving picture and it's going to be feeling a little bit fresher too. The reason for this unsettled start, though, is that we have this waving frontal feature across the western half of the UK, and that's moving its way northeastwards towards the country. And that's where we're still going to see some heavy outbreaks into this evening, but for most it is generally quite an improving picture, still staying fairly cloudy with the odd spot of rain and drizzle, but clearing across western parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, even though a few showers still feeding into western areas. But under those clearer spells, that's where it's going to be feeling cooler, but for most it's going to be quite a muggy start to Sunday. So there are still some heavier downpours expected, these mainly in the far northeast of the country, but elsewhere across Scotland, quite a bright start to Sunday, just a few showers feeding into the west, and similar across Northern Ireland, still a few showers feeding into western coastal areas, but plenty of bright sunshine to start the day. A bit more cloud around across the south and southeast, and that might just squeeze out a little bit of rain and drizzle at times, but it is generally improving as the morning goes on, so starting to see some sunny spells break through that cloud, and leaving a largely dry Sunday for most. A bit of a different story though across Northern Ireland as we see this next area of rain push into western areas, so quite a damp afternoon here. But elsewhere, plenty of sunny spells, just a few showers feeding into western parts of Scotland. Slightly cooler temperatures compared to today, so feeling a little bit fresher, but where you catch the sunshine it will still be feeling pleasant and warm. To start the new working week, still plenty of cloud around and still some rain in the north that could be heavy at times. And it is generally going to be quite a cloudy day and feeling quite humid. And we could see some showers by the afternoon, which could be heavy and slow moving across Scotland. So perhaps some heavy and persistent downpours here. A changeable weekend ahead, but that's it from me. Goodbye for now.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Don't miss your chance to win our Super Summer Giveaway. With your chance to win £30,000 cash, our biggest cash prize to date. Which means you get to spend every single penny however you like. What plans would you make with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank account? Take your family on the ultimate holiday, buy that treat that's always seemed out of reach, or just put it in the bank for a later date. However you'd spend it, make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Nana Queer. Weekends from 3 p.m.
Now, the last time we spoke, we always talk about the topic of gender and your transition. So talk to me about now, though. What you've done is you've created a comic book about your life and about your transition to tell us things that perhaps the press and media don't talk about?
Yes, so throughout the years, I have always been persuaded to write a book, but I was never ready to disclose so much. And I've been working this beautiful comic book. I brought you a little copy. It's here.